Harry Smith, 17741 Linden Lane, Caldwell Idaho. And thank you for having a hearing and allowing me to speak today. I also represent Growing Together, a couple house cleaning items. We did submit a map of areas that we were hoping to be excluded from the urban renewal or from the impact area. The one that we were specifically, you were asking Mr. Kirkin about, we were not opposing the Caldwell urban renewal area as part of the area to have removed. We supported that. Bobby, regarding hers, we acknowledge that that area isn't an impact area. We were asking, and that's part of our map, to remove that area because of the agricultural influence. And then I'll give you another reason in a minute with my testimony. And then I did email correspondence with Mr. Lister, the planning supervisor, and it was recommended that I put some of these concerns on the record. So I am here, part of what Growing Together does is education to the public. We teach about land use and how the decisions are made and what the statutes are. So we've had a heavy undertaking of going through these 10 staff reports for the cities, just like your staff has and you guys are evaluating. So we really appreciate the efforts that you've gone through. But one point of clarification, you do have Chapter 9, which is adopted, which is all of your impact areas. And according to an email I received, it is your intent to repeal those, but I do want to acknowledge that those are in place and adopted, and they reference certain maps. Chapter 9 is not referenced in any of your staff reports, so it won't be referenced in any of your findings unless you include that, and I think that you should consider that. Also, for cleanup, your staff report references ordinance criteria. There's no ordinance criteria that you're considering in the staff report. It's all statute criteria. And then the biggest area of concern that we have is the staff's analysis of the code. And I will say whoever made the signs did a fantastic job. Your analysis is correct on the signs, but the analysis in the staff report does not consider what's the right word? The areas that are likely to be annexed within the next 5 years, there's not evidence, is what I was trying to say. And your findings don't even address whether the cities provided information regarding that specific comment. What staff did focus on was the 2-mile radius. But if you look at that statute, it is very clear. The first sentence is standalone, and that first sentence states exactly what's on your reader board, what we should be focusing on, which is areas very likely to be annexed within 5 years. The next sentence is a statement that you cannot, including everything else, no matter what, you can't go greater than 2 miles. And that wasn't a Canyon County problem, that was a Ada County problem, I would say, that the legislature was trying to fix. But I would really encourage each city and you guys to really evaluate whether evidence was provided. Body gave you a very clear evidence that she owns a lot of land in your impact area that is not going to be annexed in 5 years. Those should not be included in the areas of impact if they're not highly likely to be annexed. So we would ask, as you look at all of the impact areas, that you evaluate and remove from the impact areas that are not likely to be annexed. That I would stand for questions, and thank you for letting me speak.
Chairman, I have a couple of questions. Are we able to ask questions of the Caldwell staff?
What do you think?
Pardon?
No, I would say the questions for Caldwell staff after we do
Write it down. And
Okay, thank you, but I'll save that. I do want to ask our legal a question, as there's been a statement that we don't reference a county ordinance or how business was previously done to the passage of the Lakey bill for this. So, Zach Wesley, there was a joint powers agreement that was put into place for the cities, most of the cities in Canyon County. I think Star was the exception. But with the passage of this bill, the joint powers is no longer in play, and we are operating specifically based on 67, 65, 26, or whatever it is we're doing. I don't mean that flippantly, but that section of code today. Can you confirm that or clarify it for me if I've misunderstood?
That's accurate. And so at the end of these hearings, you're going to have the opportunity to consider how you're going to implement these confirmations. You can replace just the map that exists in your current ordinance in Chapter 9 for each city, or we could repeal that ordinance entirely and adopt the map separately. The choice will be whether you want to also maintain the historic agreement and arrangements about the zoning and subdivisions specifications that are in those. Some of them are just the county rules, which is all that's required at a bare minimum now. But if you'd like, you could still maintain some of those historic subdivision and zoning rules like sidewalks, for instance.
Okay. And then Chairman, I want to ask for clarification because a statement has also been made that Caldwell failed. So I have read the staff analysis, and I'll finish the sentence, that Caldwell failed to provide an analysis evaluating the criteria that we're charged to look at today. And so I'm curious because I'm looking at municipal and public sewer and water, whether it's expected, and it references master plans, and it's a cooperative agreement. I brought that out in my questions with Caldwell, between Middleton and Caldwell, and then the acquisition of property by developers along the corridor east of Middleton Road, so that is no longer even owned by farmers. There we have referenced a lift station that's in process on Lincoln at the Sportsman to access there. They have master service agreements, or I'm sorry, municipal service agreements in place. They have comments from ITD, or Highway District 4, in 2022 when the board evaluated the urban renewal area for the city of Middleton. I spoke with the engineer for Highway District 4, and at that time what he indicated is that they would be shifting and moving to evaluating the transportation infrastructure in conjunction with Idaho, the ITD department. So Highway District 4 and ITD would be looking at the areas that are in crisis in Caldwell, and I'm assuming that that's what they did. I didn't follow that conversation. So maybe with looking at water and sewer and transportation, help me understand what you're saying is not supported in the staff report.
Yeah, there are definitely, Caldwell, I think, did a very good job of showing some areas that have good evidence. And that is also leads to why in our map that we submitted, we're not proposing to exclude all of the areas. There are definitely some areas where Caldwell has very well shown those areas. It's a matter of we've provided evidence of areas that are included that are not going to be likely annexed. We met with the city of Caldwell and had a really great discussion, and I think that there's a lot of opportunity to amend those maps, but when it went back to staff, it was that collaboration wasn't allowed into the record. It was more of you need to bring it to the hearing and let the commissioners duke it out. Which is not, like, if you look at Idaho code also, I mean, this statute has a lot of new information, but in 1C of the statute, it mandates that the county and the city, your planners, work together and agree on a map. That should be in your findings of fact, and that does not exist. Those meetings did not happen. It was the city sending an email saying, we demand a map, and then we're gonna schedule a public hearing. And so, again, a lot of opportunity to have collaboration. I've done record requests, it didn't exist. That information is not a part of the record. And so there's just an opportunity, I think, for people to come together and you guys evaluate where those areas are that have evidence to include and don't have evidence, and not include those in the area of impact.
So Chairman, I have two questions. I'm going to ask staff here in just a second to respond to that, but I'm looking at, I don't have any, I guess, yes, it's starting with Exhibit D. There's comments by Director Gibbons, followed by a letter from Mr. Crookham on growing together, followed by your proposed area of impact map, and where you've deleted sections of that. How many acres? I don't see that on here. What's your proposed acres of deletion on there?
We don't have GIS capabilities, and so we don't have a specific, we don't have that capability. So those were hand-drawn areas that were used to have a discussion with Caldwell and then for you guys as well. They would have to be, I think, negotiated between you guys on what that is. It does appear to be significant, and like the record showed in the testimony received and what's in that letter, Caldwell is not likely to really annex more than double of the land that's already annexed right now. And you guys have to provide the jail. You know, my dad was the sheriff. We can't provide a jail without costing the taxpayer to manage that kind of growth. And so again, the intent of the legislature was to let's pull these areas back. Let's show the developers real areas of where we want to grow, and then adopt impact boundaries based off of that, so that we're not overwhelming the system with houses. And really, like, we're telling developers we're open for business by having this major impact area.
Thank you. And then Chairman, in a nutshell, can you give me just a really short, what was the basis? What's your rubric? What did you use as a basis for?
Thank you. We looked very closely at where there is active farm operations, where the seed fields are, where we have viable, large, and you might be looking at parcel size, but that doesn't make a difference. We looked at viable, large areas that are in active production. There may be rural homesteads in those areas, but they are actively farmed. So like, for example, one of the areas south of Linden to Wagner, I know at least 5 different families that are multi-generational farms, my age and younger, that those young men are farming. They are not going to quit farming, and yet those areas were included in the area of impact, but they're not highly likely. They will not be annexed in 5 years. And so that's what we used, is the relationships that we know in the areas that are still actively being farmed.
And did you by chance look at who was still farmer owned? What was the percentage of farmer owned versus developer owned?
I did not keep track of those percentages, but my only comment on that, we should not let purchases dictate how we plan. We should plan for what type of growth we can handle as a community, and it's not just water, sewer, and transportation. It's jail capacity. It's all the other services. It's irrigation. It's all the services that are provided.
Thank you. And so then, Chairman, I want to give our planning person, Michelle Barron, who led the charge on asking for information and putting these staff reports. I know there's a lot of time and work in there. Can you respond to what you heard as far as the reach out?
Let's not do this. I don't need to substantiate my staff's involvement because of an allegation.
I agree with you.
That's all right.
Chairman,
Time's of the essence.
And I understand. I just wanted to, out of respect for the work that was done by staff, to have them respond to that. But I'll defer to whatever the board wants.
Okay. So, Carrie, you recognize that map?
I do.
So, you're telling me that over in this area here, that the ownership of that dirt is meaningless in planning, when we know that the major box stores already own those parcels and are having plans to develop that. But you're telling me, for planning purposes, that the ownership of the current ground is of no significance to me? I'm confused. Did I hear that wrong? I want it clarified, so I'm not picking a fight.
No, the major box stores are west of the railroad, but what I said was we should not dictate how our community plans just based on who owns land. We should be basing how we implement zoning and planning based on what we have capacity for and what doesn't impact the constituents that live here and are already demanding a quality of life where we can have access to doctors, where we can have access to the basic services without being overrun. That's our job, is to look at how are these services being provided and the quality of life within here. It's not about what developer bought what land. I'm a property rights advocate. We can sell our land to whoever we want, but that doesn't mean we're going to base our planning because someone bought land.
I see it quite a bit different. I think that the reality that Canyon County doesn't want to deal with is that at the point that a legacy farmer chooses to sell his ground to a potential future developer at multiple times the price of what it goes for agriculturally, that has taken that ground towards development sooner or later. And the only interim time between that and development is a leased farm.
Whether we can afford the services or not, whether we can provide a jail or not, they get to do that.
I'm not going to get into a debate. I'm just going to make the comment that it's an interesting point of view. And
It is.
the other thing that I'd like to know, and I think you answered the question, is are you aware of the percentage of developed owned ground that's in your green hash area?
There's limited development in those green hashed areas.
Okay, so there is some, but it's not
limited.
pure farm.
Right.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Thank you.